Just off Highway 55 in Coffee County, Tennessee, lies the grave of an alleged witch, according to local legend. Inside Concord Cemetery, one headstone is the site of reported hauntings and ghostly apparitions. It bears only a name, Sadie Baker. According to local historian and podcaster Lyle Russell, the legend of Sadie Baker is one of witchcraft and envy. The story begins back in the 1800s in the township of Manchester. The Shelton family had been in the area for years, and they were well known. They were said to have many beautiful daughters and strong sons, the most beautiful daughter being Olivia. She was said to have long black hair and sapphire eyes, as well as a very shy and sweet demeanor. She apparently had every man in town begging to do her bidding. One day, Olivia was on her way home and came upon a young woman wearing a dusty cape, staring at the ground, looking for coins. Olivia had never seen this woman before and was very curious. She knelt beside the woman and could smell that she had not bathed in days and figured she was tired and hungry as well. Olivia asked the woman who she was and where she was traveling to, but the woman gave no response. Olivia assumed the woman was simply shy and said, "Well, you shall come with me to my home and we shall sort it all out." And the woman followed her. Olivia brought the woman home and her mother and sisters began to clean her up. As soon as the filthy cape was taken away, the woman's breathtaking beauty began to shine through. She had blonde hair, jade eyes, and alabaster skin. While she was in her early 20s, her frame was so petite that she easily fit into Olivia's clothes. The other girls were instantly jealous and curious as to who this mysteriously beautiful woman was and why did she not talk. When Mr. Shelton and his sons returned home from work that night, Mr. Shelton voiced to his wife his unsettling feeling that taking in another mouth to feed, especially one as pretty as hers, was not a good idea. He thought that Olivia's beauty would not hold a candle to the woman's, and that she would complicate their negotiations with Olivia's suitors. Mrs. Shelton said that turning the woman out would only allow another family to take her in, and that their only option was to try to hide this woman away from the world until Olivia and their daughters were married. Mrs. Shelton instructed her children that they were not to speak of this woman to anyone. They told the woman that she was only safe in the house and was not to leave under any circumstances. After a few days, Olivia, confident in her own beauty, convinced the woman to walk with her to the store. It didn't take long for people to notice the woman's beauty, and the attention quickly began to focus on this mysterious woman. Word spread quickly, and it took no time at all for suitors to seek her out. The very next day, the most eligible young man, and the one Olivia had hoped to marry, called upon the Sheltons to ask for the woman's hand in marriage. Mrs. Shelton was furious, but the couple told the man that they must talk to the woman's family before they could accept and would let him know by the end of the week. Olivia overheard the conversation. In tears, she told her mother to do whatever was necessary to not let it happen. She begged her parents to turn the woman out on the streets of another town, but Mrs. Shelton was devising her own plan. The next day, Mrs. Shelton sought out the preacher, saying that this woman must be a witch. She explained how she appeared into the town out of thin air and had bewitched everyone, so that they saw the most beautiful person. The woman could not or would not speak, but she convinced the preacher that the woman kept her mouth shut because if she were to open it, pure evil would come out. The townspeople gathered and decided that it must be so. They debated burning her, hanging her, or drowning her, but they were unsure of her powers. They decided that the safest way to execute her was to bury her alive, placing heavy stones upon her grave, so if she were to rise from the dead, she could not escape. Only a few minutes after the meeting, the townspeople gathered outside of the Sheltons' home and dragged the woman from the house. She did not speak. The men began to shove her, and the women spit upon her, but she still said nothing. They kicked her down and tied her arms behind her back and then to a long rod, in which two men took hold of and dragged her to the cemetery where others were quickly digging her grave. The stoic lady looked unsettlingly at Olivia, who was crying at the cruelty being done to the alleged witch, and spoke the only words the town people had ever heard from her. "I am Sadie Baker." "3 months after Sadie's execution, Olivia married her favorite suitor, the one that had chosen Sadie first and was happily playing the role of the caring wife, but this didn't last long. Olivia was paranoid that he was thinking of Sadie instead of her, and that he had favored Sadie's beauty over hers. She began to find herself staring in the mirror and hating her dark hair and tanned skin. Several times she would stare at herself so long she began to see Sadie's reflection instead of her own. Her husband would beg her to come away from the looking glass, but she would not. One day, he came home to find Olivia with large tufts of hair missing, as she pulled all the dark hair from her head, saying, "It doesn't belong amongst her pale locks." Horrified at her behavior, he took her to the preacher, who decided that on the day of the execution, Sadie Baker must have bewitched Olivia to embody herself. To destroy the witch that was inside of Olivia, they began rigorous treatments, but none helped. One night, Olivia ran from the house as though it was on fire and was screaming at the top of her lungs, "I am Sadie Baker!" Her husband caught her and pulled her to the ground, where he said she had the strength of 10 men as she tossed him off her, laughing devilishly. She escaped into the woods where the town people lost track of her. It is said that Olivia Shelton was never seen again, but she had allowed the spirit of Sadie Baker to escape that day of the execution as she gazed into her eyes. Sadie's spirit guards her grave, where you are supposed to give her coins that she was looking for and just leave her be, as Olivia should have done so many years ago. Heinke Graham, a Tullahoma native and a graveyard enthusiast, said, "Sadie Baker's grave was by far the scariest that I have visited. I have never been creeped out that much at a cemetery." She is buried in Concord Cemetery in Manchester. Last week, it was noted that only 3 pennies were arranged at the top of her headstone. The stone that was laid on top of her grave to keep her inside is mostly covered in grass now, but it is still visible. Stop by Concord Cemetery and find her grave, if you dare. Leave some coins and pay your respects. Sadie could send you good juju, or you could be the next one to run into the woods screaming, "I am Sadie Baker." The legend of Sadie's grave and the ghostly sightings that surround it continue to captivate the imagination of locals and visitors alike, whether it is Sadie herself or Olivia, the specter of guilt, watching over the final resting place. The haunting allure of the tale remains, forever entwined with the whispers of the past and the spirits that may or may not roam this sacred ground. Thank you all for watching this episode, Sadie Baker, the Witch of Coffee County, Tennessee. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Tell me what you think. I think it's horrible. I think it's sad, but I think it makes a great legend, whether it's real or not. I definitely think it's a great legend. All right, guys. So I hope to see you guys next time on Tales Told in the Dark.